My chronic fatigue recovery story was crazy. From hitting complete rock bottom a few years ago to getting my energy back and now helping others do the same. In this video, I want to talk about all the supplements I've tried along the way and the ones that helped me get here. We will talk about the basics like iron, vitamin B12 or vitamin D, as well as more specific compounds like adaptogens such as ashwagandha, detox supplements like N-acetylcysteine, or mitochondria support like CoQ10. I've tried them all and we'll talk about which ones worked and which are really just a waste of time. Great, so if you're watching this, chances are you're dealing with fatigue that goes way beyond just being tired. I've been there, and for me, it wasn't just the low energy, it was brain fog, headaches, weakness, sensitivity to stress, and feeling like my body was just stuck in low gear no matter what I did. It was definitely the lowest point in my life, and I remember going to see doctors and speaking to specialists several times per week just to get answers for my weird symptoms. Obviously, chronic fatigue recovery is a huge rabbit hole, and supplements weren't the only thing that got me out of it. Diet, sauna, meditation, and other things definitely also played a huge role. But supplements helped, and when I see others talking about them online, I often see them overwhelmed from all the contradictory studies and all these claims that come with these nutrients. So let me use this video to share my own experience and help guide you in the right direction. This is obviously anecdotal and every case is different, but I will explain the mechanisms behind each supplement as we go, so you can then make a more informed choice for your own recovery. Because I took so many products over the years, for this video I put the supplements into several groups. We will start with the basics, and these are the supplements that you will hear about as soon as you research chronic fatigue. So the ones that your doctor or surface level health YouTuber will probably recommend first. This includes things like iron, vitamin B12 or vitamin D, stuff that is pretty mainstream. The next category is stress and adrenal support, so things like adaptogens, vitamin C, sodium and potassium. This is the stuff that re-energizes your adrenal glands and improves your resistance to stress. Third will be detoxification support, so things that help your body get rid of toxins like heavy metals, excess hormones, and the like. This category includes products like NAC, DIM, or alpha-lipoic acid. Then we will go over to mitochondrial support. Here I want to look at nutrients that your mitochondria need to create energy, so things like coenzyme Q10, carnitine, creatine, and more. And lastly, we have anything related to neurotransmitters and methylation, which includes certain B vitamins, Methyldonors like methionine or TMG, and also more niche things like phosphatidylserine and GABA supplements. As you can see, there's a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it, starting with the basics, which again include all the things that your average person or your normal GP connects with energy. Honestly, none of them really help me, and things like copper, which works together with iron for oxygen transport but also for energy metabolism, actually made my symptoms a lot worse. I would become more anxious and more overstimulated, and I would feel more inflamed and just worse than before. In fact, I later learned that I had copper and iron overload, which means that you have too much of these minerals in your tissues in a form that the body cannot use or eliminate. This is very common among people with chronic fatigue, and the nasty thing is that it often comes with a deficiency in the blood. So when someone gets a blood test and sees that their copper or iron markers are in the gutter, then they will probably decide to supplement, and long term they're actually making things worse because it just leads to more overload. Vitamin D was kind of similar. It did help at first, but after a few days of taking it, I would get achy bones and my teeth would feel really weird. This was a clear sign of a magnesium deficiency, which vitamin D uses up when it's metabolized in your body. To be honest, of all the basic supplements, really the only one that helped me was magnesium. I'd sleep a little better, feel calmer, and have less muscle tension. It was small things, but definitely noticeable. By the way, if you have energy problems and aren't on magnesium, then definitely get on it. Every single student that I have shows deficiency symptoms, and it's one of the fundamental minerals that gets used up by stress and exhaustion. Vitamin B1 and B12 are often also promoted for energy metabolism, and some people get good results from high-dose thiamine, so B1, or B12 injections. I didn't. They didn't hurt, but they didn't do much either. Basically, when you have chronic fatigue, it's usually not just one single nutrient that's missing, but a whole bunch. So superdosing protocols for one specific nutrient often work short-term, but long-term, you need to also work on your other deficiencies. So I'm not saying you shouldn't try them out, but chances are that you need more than just that one individual nutrient, especially if your problems have been going on for a while. Next, let's talk about stress and adrenal support. This is a big category, and I've had very mixed experiences with it. Some things were helpful in the long run, but many backfired or only worked temporarily. Stress-related fatigue is very real, and obviously if your adrenal glands are dysregulated, then it changes your whole HPA axis. So if you want to recover, you also need to look at that. Let's start with adaptogens. In theory, adaptogens are herbs that help your body adapt to stress. It doesn't matter if it's physical, emotional, or environmental stress. And this sounds great, right? But in practice, most adaptogens didn't work for me. I tried all the popular ones, so ashwagandha, rhodiola, and the like, and some make me feel sedated and foggy, while others gave me a strange wired but tired feeling. Ashwagandha especially made me feel mentally slow and physically heavy, and my body didn't really like it. The thing about adaptogens is that their reaction to them is very individual. So unlike basic nutrients, their effects are less predictable. That's because they interact with so many systems at once, so hormones, neurotransmitters, cortisol rhythms, and often we still don't fully understand how many of these herbs work at a biochemical level. The only adaptogen that really worked for me was Brahmi, which is also known as Bacopa monnieri. It had a calming and focusing effect, and I still take it regularly to this day, especially on high-stress days or when I'm mentally overloaded. Next to adaptogens, there are also nutrients that directly support adrenal function. These were much more reliable for me, but again, only when used in the right dose and context. Vitamin C is a great example here. It is essential for adrenal hormone production and also supports detox pathways, which I will talk about later. But I had to be careful with the dose. At low doses, it helped a lot. So better focus, slightly more stable energy, and fewer emotional crashes. But when I took too much, so let's say more than 500 milligrams, it actually started to overstimulate me. That's because vitamin C stimulates adrenaline production in your adrenal glands. And when your system is already shaky, that extra push can tip you over. Next are electrolytes like sodium and potassium, and they definitely were a game changer for me. These electrolytes are often low in people with chronic fatigue, and they play a big role in adrenal health. My lab tests showed that I was depleted in both, and it lined up perfectly with my symptoms. So dizziness, fatigue, brain fog, and the classic crash after standing up too quickly. What most people don't realize is that aldosterone, which is a hormone produced by your adrenal glands, regulates sodium and potassium balance. So when your adrenals are underperforming, aldosterone often drops, which means that it leads to poor retention of sodium and then an electrolyte imbalance and everything else. And that alone can already mimic or even worsen fatigue symptoms. Once I understood this, electrolyte support definitely became a daily ritual for me. So I started adding high-quality salt to my diet, eating more potassium-rich foods like cooked vegetables, and using potassium chloride as a supplement. The results came surprisingly fast, and my energy stabilized and my nervous system just felt more anchored. On the other hand, one thing that my body really couldn't handle at all was adrenaline precursors, so things like tyrosine. Tyrosine is an amino acid that your body uses to make dopamine, which then gets turned into adrenaline, and some people use it to feel more alert. But for me, it was a disaster. Even small doses make me feel overstimulated and more anxious. My heart would race, and my sleep quality would tank. It just felt like my nervous system was on fire again. I now know that this was because I was dealing with copper toxicity, which leads to adrenaline dominance, since it converts dopamine to adrenaline. My body was already making too much adrenaline in the first place and also not breaking it down properly. So adding more raw materials for more adrenaline production made things a lot worse. This is why understanding your individual biochemistry matters so much. A supplement that works great for one person might completely overload someone else. In my case, supporting my nervous system with calming minerals like magnesium and also giving some gentle support for my adrenal glands through sodium, potassium, and normal doses of vitamin C helped, but everything else really didn't. It just overstimulated me too much. Now on to detox supplements. Detoxification was a really important piece of my recovery, maybe even more important than I realized at first. Again, a big part of my chronic fatigue was caused by toxic overload, especially from metals like copper, but also others like aluminum and mercury. On top of that, I also had clear signs of estrogen dominance, which brought on its own set of symptoms like mood swings, brain fog, and feeling inflamed for no obvious reason. So yes, supporting detox pathways was definitely crucial. But the problem was that most detox supplements, like most energy supplements, were too strong for me. My body just wasn't ready to handle them. For example, I had a horrible reaction to vitamin B6 in the form of P5P, which is a more potent form, which is often recommended for people with estrogen problems because it helps break down estrogen in the liver. Within a day or two, it completely knocked me out and was so intense that I couldn't take B6 again for several months after that. I also tried dim-sodiazole methane, which is another popular supplement used to help with estrogen detox. A lot of people swear by it, but for me, again, it was too much. I just got jittery, nauseous, and felt unwell. Looking back now, I don't think my liver was ready at that point to process that level of excess estrogen coming out. My elimination pathways like bioflow and glutathione recycling were still very sluggish, so DIM just stirred things up without getting them out. This was a common theme with many supplements that mobilized toxins for me but didn't help get them out. That being said, some supplements did help, especially when I started very low and slow. N-acetylcysteine, so NAC, was one of the best, and it supports glutathione production. But I had to keep the dose very low, so maybe 100 to 200 milligrams max. Any more than that, and I would feel I was again detoxing too fast, which only made symptoms worse. Calcium D-glucarate was another big win. It helped clear out excess estrogen in a much gentler way than DIM. It works by blocking the reabsorption of excess estrogen when it's already on its way out, so it's a little different in its mechanism, but it definitely helped me. And finally, selenium also played a key role, especially with metal detox. It binds to heavy metals like mercury and helps glutathione work properly. It is fairly gentle, and I took around 100 to 200 micrograms per day, or sometimes just ate a few Brazil nuts. That alone already made a noticeable difference. Okay, now let's move on to the next category, which is mitochondrial support. When most people think chronic fatigue recovery, they immediately think of mitochondrial dysfunction. And that's for a good reason, because your mitochondria are the energy powerhouses of your cells. If they aren't working properly, you're going to feel tired, weak, and foggy no matter what else is going on. So I tried a bunch of supplements that were aimed at energy production inside the cell. Some helped a little bit, but others hit me like a truck. Also, over time, I started to see this category of supplements a little differently. You see, mitochondrial dysfunction is often more of a symptom than a root cause. For me, it wasn't that my mitochondria lacked nutrients, it was that they were under stress from other problems. So things like methylation imbalances, which we will get to in a second, heavy metal toxicity, and oxidative stress. All these can block function of your mitochondria. So just dumping in more fuel and cofactors for them doesn't always work. And it sometimes can make things worse because it just speeds up the detox process, which will then overwhelm you. One supplement that I had a particularly strong reaction to was alpha-lipoic acid. ALA is often marketed as both a mitochondrial support supplement and an antioxidant. What many people don't realize is that ALA is also a very potent metal chelator, so it steers up heavy metals stored in your tissues. For someone like me who had metal issues and very sluggish detox pathways, that was a really bad idea. Within a day or two, I had headaches again and all the symptoms we talked about before. So in hindsight, it was way too much too soon, and I should have never used such a potent detoxifier in the beginning. Next, we have coenzyme Q10, which I tolerated better. I took fairly small doses and noticed improvements in liver function and overall stamina. It wasn't a dramatic change, but it helped make daily activities feel less draining. Over time, I saw more benefit when I combined it with other supports like magnesium and potassium. Two more supplements that made a difference were carnitine and creatine. These are often considered mitochondrial boosters, but they help me more because of their impact on methylation. Both are methyl sparing, meaning they help your body conserve methyl groups, which are critical for energy detox and neurotransmitter support. As someone who's an undermethylator, this was a very big deal. All in all, I would say that mitochondrial dysfunction is definitely a major cause of chronic fatigue, but the standard way of tackling it, so just giving high doses of mitochondrial cofactors, doesn't work for a lot of people because you also need to work on getting out what's blocking your cell's function. This is the problem with so many practitioners out there. They focus on one specific thing, like your mitochondria or just your metals or just your hormones, and then they fail to see the connection between all of them. Often there's some underlying cause that when you work on it will improve all the other systems as well. Great, onto the last category of supplements, which is methylation and neurotransmitter support. This area took me the longest to figure out by far. Methylation is super complex and it affects energy, mood, and your nervous system. I explain the basics in different videos that will be linked in the description, and it's always a balancing act. I'm an undermethylator, which means my body doesn't have enough methyl groups, which are crucial for all kinds of bodily functions. Because methyl groups are needed for neurotransmitter synthesis, undermethylators tend to have low levels of things like serotonin and dopamine. You can then increase your methyl intake through supplements like methionine, TMG, choline, or through the methyl-sparing supplements I talked about before, like creatine and carnitine. All these definitely helped, but the trick was finding my balance. If I took too much of something, then I could feel myself going into overmethylation, which you also don't want. And the same applies for overmethylators who are reducing their methylation too much. For example, by taking things like niacin. Also, the one thing that you really want to be careful with is methylfolate. Methylfolate is often seen as a straightforward methyl donor, but its effects are actually way more complex and in some cases very contradictory. On the one hand, it does donate a methyl group outside the cell, which can help support methylation, but inside the cell, specifically at the level of the DNA, it actually acts as a methyl reducer because it removes methyl groups from certain gene regions. One of the key effects of all folates, including methylfolate, is that it upregulates genes that are responsible for neurotransmitter reuptake. That means it increases the reabsorption of serotonin and dopamine back into the nerve cell. That means it creates two competing effects: the methyl donation from the attached methyl group and the serotonin reuptake driven by the folate itself. In practice, the net effect is often negative, especially for undermethylators who typically already have low serotonin levels. For these people, increasing serotonin reuptake is the exact opposite of what they need, and it can lead to worse symptoms like depression, anxiety, or panic attacks. So if you've tried methylfolate before and liked it at first, but then crashed after 2 to 3 months, then that's what's going on. All in all, I have to say that methylation and neurotransmitters are a very complicated topic, and people get it wrong all the time, just because there's so much contradictory information on it online. The two supplements that were pretty straightforward and helped me were phosphatidylserine and GABA, which both help reduce stress and anxiety. Phosphatidylserine basically regulates cortisol and tells your brain to bring down the stress response, and GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that you can supplement directly. Even though in theory it will break down in your digestive tract, it did have positive effects on me. I just had to take fermented GABA because regular GABA supplements didn't do anything. And the third supplement that can be tied into this and that I still take regularly is lecithin. This is a fatty substance that is found in foods like eggs, soybeans, and sunflower seeds, and it helps support cell membranes and neurotransmitter function. It's also a mild methyl donor, so perfect for me, and it also provides choline, which is an incredibly important nutrient for your nervous system. On top of that, it helps with bile flow, so it also supports liver and detox function. It's really one of my favorite supplements ever. And that's pretty much it. These were the supplements that helped me during my recovery, and there were a few more that I didn't mention, like zinc, lithium, or certain vitamins like A and K2. But I talk about them in other videos in more detail, and I didn't want to make this one too long. Really, what I want you to take away from this video is that chronic fatigue recovery can be very complex, and it took me years to figure out what was actually going on inside my body, and then even longer to figure out what truly helped. One of the hardest lessons that I had to learn along the way is that supplement reactions are highly individual. So what works like magic for someone else can totally backfire for you. With that being said, I also noticed some recurring patterns, so core imbalances that seem to show up in most people with chronic fatigue, regardless of their specific case. And once I addressed these, things slowly but steadily started to shift. For me, the biggest breakthroughs were one, that I had to figure out I had copper issues. This was probably the single most important discovery. I wasn't just deficient in copper in the blood, but also had copper toxicity in the tissue, so it wasn't circulating properly and just building up. Fixing this probably accounted for at least 50 to 60% of my recovery, and once I started lowering copper and support its bioavailability, many symptoms started to improve. 2, I had to correct my other mineral imbalances, so this included things like magnesium deficiency, zinc deficiency, and electrolyte imbalances. I realized that I was chronically depleted across the board, and then once I rebalanced these minerals, it brought me more stable energy, better sleep, and far fewer crashes. 3, I had to improve liver and detox pathways, so my body wasn't just overloaded with toxins, it also wasn't clearing them out very efficiently. So this meant I had to support bioflow, glutathione levels, and estrogen detox. And then lastly, like I said before, understanding and supporting methylation. This was by far the trickiest part because methylation is so easy to get wrong. This is also why I don't think it should be the starting point for most people unless you have clear signs of neurotransmitter imbalances or mental health problems. You will probably make more progress by focusing on your minerals, detox, and stress support before you should tackle your methylation. Otherwise, it will just be too much information for you to handle at once. In the end, the supplements that helped me the most were the ones that supported one or more of these 4 areas. They didn't cure me overnight, but they definitely laid the foundation for my body to heal itself. If you're in the middle of your own recovery right now, please know this. It is definitely possible to get better. You don't have to figure out everything at once. Start with the basics and support your body gently. Pay attention to how you respond, and most importantly, please don't give up. There were so many moments where I thought I'd be stuck like that forever, which turned out to be false, obviously. Also, if you're a little overwhelmed right now and looking for a step-by-step system that combines everything we talked about in this video, make sure to check the description where I linked my recovery program. It includes my exact protocol that can really be adapted to anyone, along with lessons on diet, supplement dosages, nervous system support, and more. It helps you avoid the most common mistakes that can set people back years, and it goes way deeper than my YouTube videos. It brings together everything I've learned over the years, and if you're interested, just open the description, it will be listed under my programs.